And then he told them, he was like, guys, we're like really good with like battling on horses and stuff. So the Chinese are like a bunch of pussies, right? They have an army, they're a bunch of pussies. So like we'll conquer them, it'll be super easy. So they did that. Okay, so they conquered the northern half of China, right? And so then in the decades that followed that, they basically just like, okay, they swept across Central Asia. Now, the one big important thing that you need to understand about the Mongolian conquest is there's one guy in Central Asia. Okay, he had this empire that was like in Central Asia, right? And so at one point, when Genghis Khan was trying to expand his empire, he sent these envoys to this guy in Central Asia, and he was like, "Hey, what's up, man? We need to start trading and stuff, because like, if we trade things, we'll be like, trade leads to prosperity. So like, the more we trade, the more we have interaction, like the better it'll be." And so he sent his emissaries to this guy in Central Asia. And so when he did that, this king, this guy that ruled over this empire in Central Asia, he was like, you know, what the fuck? I never heard of this guy, this Khan guy. Never heard of him. So he slaughtered Genghis Khan's emissaries. He like cut their heads off. They sent their heads back to Genghis Khan, right?
And they probably weren't too happy about that.
No! Genghis Khan was pissed. He was like, dude, like, what the fuck? I was not like being belligerent or anything towards you. And you just fucking killed my ambassadors, right? So, no holds barred. The Mongols fucking invaded this guy's empire in Central Asia and just like wiped out everybody. All the cities were destroyed. People died of plague, disease. People were killed, slaughtered, enslaved. Like, no mercy, right? So that's when the Mongol Empire started, right? When this guy did that. And so after that, it was like, nobody fucked with the Mongols, okay? The Mongols just did whatever the fuck they wanted. And so Genghis Khan, you know, he died in like 1226 or something. And so, you know, he's gonna die. And then so his son took over, and then his grandson after that. So eventually the Mongols just had this empire, right? That was bigger than any empire the world had ever seen in history.
Bigger than the Roman Empire?
No, the Roman Empire had nothing. Like, nothing in comparison to the Mongol Empire. The Mongol Empire took over all of Central Asia, all of China, all of southwestern Asia. They bordered on the Byzantine Empire. Like, the Byzantine Empire was like, holy fuck, the Mongols are right there. Like, the Mongols, right? And so the Mongols took over all of Russia, and the Russians were really scared of the Mongols for a while, because the Mongols basically ruled Russia.
Right.
And it wasn't until... but then, see, the problem was, it all came to an end when this one thing happened. So, Kabul Khan, the grandson of Genghis Khan, died. So then all the generals of all the armies of the Mongols that were spread across all of Asia, right, they had to come back to the capital of Mongolia to elect a new emperor, right? So...
democratically?
Sort of. It was a complicated system, but basically the Mongols, like, they were on the verge of conquering all of Europe, right? Just like 5 or 10 more years, and they would have conquered like all of like Germany,
basically the known world,
France, England. Like, it would have been no challenge.
Yeah.
Like, the Mongols would have wiped the floor with these guys. They stood no chance. But at the exact time in history when it was just like the worst possible time. I think he was called Kublai Khan. He was the guy who died, and then all the Mongol generals had to come in from the like the borders of the empire where they were conquering their enemies and stuff. They had to come back to the capital and elect a new emperor. So that's when it all went down to shit.
Because the generals were gone.
Yeah. So they stopped conquering other people, and so the Golden Horde, they had conquered all of Russia, right? So that's when it kind of all started to come to an end, because the Mongols divided up their empire into 5 different parts. So the main group, they controlled like Mongolia and China, but then there was another group, they controlled like Tibet and like a few other parts around. And then there was another group who controlled Russia and like the parts over there. And then there was another group of Mongols who controlled like Persia, because they had conquered Persia a long time ago.
Right.
So Persia was under Mongol control. So the Mongolian Empire split up into 5 different parts.
Like states.
Yeah. So, and at this point, they weren't one empire anymore. So then that's the point where they started to deteriorate, like really, really badly. They couldn't keep their empire together as like one whole unified Mongolian empire.
Right.
So then, the time when it really started to be fucked up for the Mongolians is when this guy named Ivan III, the Prince of Muscovy, what we now know as Moscow, the city-state of Moscow, he rebelled against the Golden Horde, and he was like, guys, like, what the fuck? We're not gonna pay you tribute anymore. Like, we're not just gonna pay you like thousands of pounds of silver just because we're scared of you.
Right.
And so at this point, the Golden Horde was this like fearsome tribe of warriors, Mongolian warriors, that was like unopposed. Like everyone was scared of them.
Right.
But this guy named Ivan III stood up to them. It was like, fuck you guys, I'm not gonna pay you tribute anymore. And so they were like, oh, okay, so I guess we have to go to war now. So they went to war, and Moscow won its independence. So then that's what started the Russian Empire, because Moscow was the first city-state that stood up to the Mongols. And from then on, like, there were other Russian city-states who had like prominence over the Russian system before. So first it was Kiev, and then there was Novgorod, and you know those cities were pretty important for a while. But then Moscow stood up to the Mongols, and then Moscow was the main city of the Russians. So like all the Russian people looked up to the city of Moscow, and from then on, the Moscovians took over Russia, and then they created this Russian Empire, and that's what we now know as Russia.
Wow.
So that's how all that started. So, but then the other parts of the Mongolian Empire, just like, it deteriorated slowly over time.
But they still have their stir fry.
See, like the main Mongolians, though, the ones that kind of became the people who took over the Chinese part of the empire.
Yeah.
See, all the Mongolians.
Was this pre-wall or post-wall?
This is post-wall.
Post-wall. Okay.
Yeah. So all the Mongolians, they sort of took on the society of the people that they conquered. So the Mongolians that conquered the Muslim Persian Empire, they all became Muslims. And then the Mongolians who took over the Chinese part of the empire, they all became like Confucians and Taoists.
They just became different people.
Yeah, basically. And so eventually it just deteriorated into a bunch of different empires, and then the Mongols just didn't exist like 100 years after Genghis Khan, because they all just like separated into all these different empires. And then it was funny because we all know who Marco Polo is, right? So Marco Polo was this guy who traveled from the Italian city-state of Venice, all the way to China. And so he discovered all these things about the Chinese, and then went back to Venice and like told the Europeans about it, but none of them believed him. They were like, what the fuck are you talking about? A black rock that burns? He was trying to tell them about charcoal.
Gunpowder?
Well, gunpowder sort of, but it was charcoal. none of them knew what charcoal was. But he was trying to tell
How
them,
did they grill?
there's this black... they didn't grill very much. But he was trying to tell them there's this black rock that would, like, burn. But it would stay. And it would burn. And you would create fire from it. And none of them believed him. But he was trying to tell them about charcoal. So... Marco Polo was the first guy that went all the way from Europe to China and then back again. So that was kind of important because when a couple hundred years later, after the Mongolian Empire had completely disintegrated into like 100 different parts,
Right.
The Europeans remembered all the stuff that Marco Polo told them about Europe, or he told them about China. But no one believed him. So then when when Christopher Columbus went to the New World, went to the West, right? What he was trying to do was he was trying to discover India.
Right.
The East Indies, right?
He kind of missed. Well, he was just a little bit off.
A little bit off. So he landed in the Bahamas, but he thought he discovered China. It's hilarious.
Wow.
But, so, what happened next? Okay.
So he was looking for charcoal in the Bahamas.
Well, something like that. So, he was trying to look for the Emperor of China, who was called, like, Kublai Khan, right? But Kublai Khan was someone who Marco Polo had known of, that he told about to the Europeans, but that guy was long gone.
Yeah.
So, like, the Mongolian Empire didn't exist anymore. By the time Christopher Columbus got to the New World, he thought he was in China, but he was actually in the Bahamas. And
so they didn't know what the fuck he was talking about.
Like, Christopher Columbus took, like, 4 different trips to the Caribbean, right? All financed by the kings and queens of Spain. But he thought he was going to China.
I was about to say, at no point did they, like, figure out, hey, guys, this, like, isn't China.
No. Christopher Columbus went to his deathbed thinking that he had discovered Asia. It wasn't until, like, a couple of years after that a German geographer named... I can't remember what his name was. It started with an M or something. It was the German geographer named Amerigo. That's where we get the name America from. His name was Amerigo, so...
Vespucci,
yeah. So, he was the one that we got the name North and South America from, right? So, it wasn't until a couple of years after Christopher Columbus's death that Amerigo Vespucci discovered that, hey, North and South America are these continents that we've, like, never thought of before.
Right.
And that, no, they have nothing to do with China. China is, like, thousands of miles to the west of America.
Yeah.
He was the first president, but he didn't figure that out until a few years after Christopher Columbus died.
Damn.
So Christopher Columbus went to his deathbed thinking that he had discovered, like, Asia, the place where, like, Kublai Khan, the place where
Xanadu,
all these all these, like, Europeans had always remembered these stories from that Marco Polo had told them of, like, a couple hundred years before that. So it's crazy, dude. It's like all these stories are interconnected, you know?
And that concludes this episode.